Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey Podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey Podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoltmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Active Turnkey Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoltmeister, and I don't have anybody with me today. Today, I don't have Tom Olson, or I don't have a special guest. Today, I have some information I can bring to you that can help you guys. And so if you're like me, you're looking for deals, you want to find out information as much as you can about a property, and you don't want to necessarily just go with what you can find on Zillow, although that is basically, what's information that's available to anybody. But if you want to dig for specifics, where do you go and how do you find information that you can look up the property and stuff you can find quickly to verify what's going on at the property, the square footage, taxes, the lot size, what's going on around it, if you want to see where your property lines are, all different types of things like that. And so today's podcast is going to be pretty unique. We're going to go, and I'm just going to throw you just three simple websites that you can go to and that most local municipalities should have for county records. Today we'll use our Lake County, Indiana, for the property, and so we'll use a property that we actually sold recently, and this is actually a flip property. So if you're an investor out there and you bought a property from us, it's okay. We won't use yours. But today we will go and take a look at that property. We'll search it and we'll start picking out some information, some things that we can use. And so hopefully, as we go through this, you'll find the value. And this is what we do when we are vetting a deal. And so when we acquire a property or we're doing our due diligence on a property, we will look this information up on these sites, among other things, and verify what information is being told to us, along with our own pictures and stuff like that. But I'm going to quickly share my screen, and we're going to jump right in. And so we'll start off with the treasure site from Lake County. And so if you search just Lake County, Indiana treasurer, it'll take you to a web page. And then here you want to go to your tax search. And so we click this little ribbon here, and it brings us to this page. Now, for this property, we'll just go over here. You can search by many different things. You can search by parcel number, which is always fun to find. Property by parcel number, we won't do that. Mailing address, we're just going to go by location address. And so we'll search this one. And so the one we just sold was 1396, and it's on Hanley. All right. Now, many cases, if you guys go searching on these things, they have here the directional, they have the city. In my experience, the more information you find, the more difficult it is for the information to come up. So I generally do a generic search, just the numbers and the street, no direction, not even the street or avenue or what have you. I just type in as much as possible, click go. And then in this case, there's only one in the area. Sometimes, depending on if there is a place or an avenue or something like that, you might have several different options. In this case, we're the only one that's even close to it. So we can see here, Olson Group Network, LLC, 1396 Hanley. And so we'll open it. Now, a couple of things we want to look at first. And so a few things you can verify. You got our information. So we are on title. So this is something we own. It's got the address here and the legal description. So, that might be something you need in a document or a contract or something like that. But we're just going to go in here and see what we can glean from this. Now, this property actually has higher taxes than a typical house in Gary does. But first of all, one thing we're going to look at is the assessed value and tax summary. And this is 1A, 1B, 1C. So if you're buying a property in Indiana, they're going to be assessed in this way. They're going to be assessed at either A, B, or C. And A, so in this case, it's capped at 1%. That's your owner occupant. And that is somebody who is using using their own benefits there at 1%. And so they only have to pay the 1% tax. And so they use their homestead exemption. And so if you see here, it's at 0. So they are not assessing this at 1. So somebody must have held this and not lived at the property. They did not have the exemption. And so if you see here, they're running it at 2%. and it's assessed at $76,000. So in Indiana, if you're owner occupant, the tax is assessed at 1%. So 1% of 76 would be, $764 or so. And in this case, it's at B, so it's 2%. So 2% of that, plus a little bit of extra dollars here for a 3%. So usually in that situation, if it's at C, the previous owner used the property as a business, and they had a business coming out there, something along that line. So here they have over $80,000 in assessed value for the property. And so we look here as we come down, the property tax cap is $1,705. And so that's the tax for that property for that year. And so, and it's at 2%. Now, what's tricky is at times when you look at this number and you're an investor and you're buying to hold, this number, could be assessed at A. So the first one, so it'd be $76,400 at A. Now, as an investor, you need to know that if that's the case, then they're gonna, when you buy that property and you hold it, your taxes are gonna double. You don't have an exemption. You don't have that homestead exemption. So those numbers are going to double for you. So you need to pay attention to that. If you see and you're buying a property on the MLS and it happens to be an owner occupant and they have a homestead exemption, then your taxes are not going to be at that number. They're going to be double that number. And now obviously if you double that number, that eats into your cash flow. And so you want to pay attention to that number. So here, and again, this is for the state of Indiana, and that's how they do their taxes. And so in this case, the tax for this year, for the year 2020, tax year 2020, is $1,705. Now, there's also this voter approved. So if you've heard anything from me, if you've seen deals or if you've gotten deals from me in the past, you've heard me reference this number. Now, these are referendums. These are things that are sent out to the local area, and it generally has to do with schools or roads or fire stations, police stations, local parks where they're making some improvements. And so in this case, they're getting taxed an additional, or there's a voter approved charge at $462.52. So that's going to go on top of your tax bill. So your tax bill here then is $2167.52. Okay. And so now that is not your number all the time. The voter approved charge does come off over time, depending upon how long the vote was for. So if it's 6 years, 5 years, 7, whatever that number is, that's going to come off eventually. And it does adjust from year to year. So sometimes we've seen places that have had voter approved charges up to $1,200, depending on situations. And so in some cases, if you're an investor, that's a negative thing. I understand, and I've been there myself with some of my properties, but usually it's improving the area. So if it's a school, for instance, it's negative. If you have a $1,200 voter approved charge, that's straight against your cash flow. That's a pretty big hit. However, over time, they do say that when the schools get these types of improvements, that attendance goes up. And so you would think that over the course of the time that you own this property, if you buy and hold for 20, 30, 40 years, you should be getting some kind of benefit long-term from those types of improvements. It's going to help your area. And so a couple of different ways to look at it, but that's how you evaluate this. So you look at, again, going back here, you look at if it's A, B, or C. If it's A, you need to make sure you account for that. And then if it's B, then you should be good. The number down here is pretty much your tax number as far as that property tax cap. You check the voter approved charges, and right here, your tax is $2167.52. Now, just real quickly, if your property is in the city, then in this case here, if we look under other applicable charges, you'll see that there's a storm water in Gary. So there's a stormwater charge, and in Gary it's $60. So again, that's in addition to that previous number. So if we were creating a pro forma and we're sending this out to you, we would run this at $2167.52. We'll add the $60, and so you'd see it be at $2,220, whatever that number is. So that's that. And then down here, it breaks up in installments. I'm sure you guys have seen your tax bills. This just goes ahead and shows this, but sometimes you want to find that out. Is the seller current on their payments? And so if they're selling their property, it's something you'll pay attention to. You'll want to make sure there. In fact, there have been some cases where, wholesalers may not include prorations for taxes. And so you may be acquiring a property that has delinquent taxes. And if you're buying as is, you may end up being needing to eat that cost, or maybe the seller doesn't know or is not trying to tell you all the information. So if you're trying to figure this out and you see that they have 2 installments here, this past one in May would have been May 10, it was due. that's delinquent. And so you definitely want to pay attention to that. And also it would include in this May bill if there were previous delinquent bills, penalties and such that you'll need to pay attention to. But in the end, that is how you evaluate this page, and that's how you can check that information out. And so it's really helpful for you. And then down here further, it has the previous year's taxes. And so this is how you can pretty quickly go in and you can figure out what your taxes are, should be, and will be as time goes on. And now another page that we like to go to is go to your Lake County assessor. So the previous one was your Lake County treasurer. This is how you find out what you're going to be charged for taxes. This page is the Lake County assessor. And so again, similarly, I'm going to give just enough information. So I'm going to type in 1396 Hanley. And that's it. I'm not giving you directions. And so there's one property that props up. Gonna select that. And then it's going to give me several different things. First of all, it's going to give me previous owners that may or may not mean something to you. I'm not sure. Doesn't include the sales amounts. Gives the property valuation. You can find out what this property has been, the valuation annually. You can look at amenities, which can be helpful if you're looking to see if it's got septic and wells. So over here on the right, you see it for public utilities. You got water, sewer, gas, electricity. That's something that you might want to know about. Sales information. And then here's one that I usually use consistently. It's the improvement info. It's what the property is. So in this case, it's a single family home with a detached garage. And in this case, they graded their property an F. That may or may not be something that's important to you, but it does give you the size and the year build. Now, if you click on this information thing here, toggle, it does give you information. So this is, again, what the tax, what the treasurer and the county is using to assess the property based upon this information. So sometimes we have found that where they may be assessing the property as a 2-bed when actually it's a 3-bed. And so in that case, your tax maybe even be a little lower than it should be. But in this case, it's it's a 1-story property with a finished basement. It's got 3 bedrooms, 1 bath above grade. And so, and it even breaks it down to water heaters and things like that. But this is, again, a way you can figure things like that out. And then down here further, it gives you a breakdown of the layout of the property. And this has got a base of 1,428 square feet. So it's a pretty good size ranch on the main level. And then in the basement, it's got about another 1,000 square foot finish in this particular property. So it's actually a pretty large property, and we just sold in Gary. And so again, this is information that can be very helpful for you as you're trying to evaluate the property. It does break down some taxes, which would take you directly to the previous site we were at. Give you the property card. This is just a detail of all the information we've kind of discussed. It gives you detailed information, and we can kind of go through that at a different time. Forms, and then lastly at the street view. So some of you may use this when you're valuing the property, but this is the property from the street view from the side. And so again, this is a very helpful. I like to use this when I'm trying to evaluate a property, because again, I personally have purchased properties that were assessed as a 2-bed, and when I walked in the home, there were 3 bedrooms clearly. And so obviously, as you're vetting a deal, that's going to have a massive impact on rent and on your after repair value and things like that. So you definitely want to look into that. And the other thing you want to pay attention to is with that same case is, if you look at square footage, maybe there is plenty of room to add an additional bedroom. And those are all things that you want to take into account. So this could be a helpful tool. And again, many of you may already be using this, but this could be something you can use instead of using Zillow or what have you. The last one I really want to show you guys today is the GIS portal. And again, this is helpful. I've used this one many times to check and see what's going around the property, look at property lines, what's going on next to it. And in some cases to even get a rough analysis of, is our property on or part of our garage on someone else's property, things like that. And so we'll get the GIS portal here and we'll type it through. So you click on that, you accept the disclaimer. We'll go to search. And again, I like to search by address. So again, very case sensitive. So we'll just go 1396 Hanley. Let it load. Search. And then it gives you a bunch of information. So this is the view it shows you, and it has clearly, we are really good. So now one thing that our attorney has said in the past is that, so if you look at the line here at the very top, it appears that it may even be kind of clipping or right up against the roof of the neighbor. Now, in these types of areas, these lines are really close. But one thing that your attorney may tell you is there is some variance here that they make up for it. Now, these are pretty good lines that they've been able to pinpoint, but there does need to be some room for variance. But obviously, you can use this as just a line. If there is an issue with a survey or something where you're buying a property and you think that could be a possibility, you definitely want to look into that. And this may help you in that sense. It also does give you other information here that you can use. It gives you acreage right here. Again, it gives you also legal description, the seller information, and then you can get into more specific information as well. But these tools, again, can be very helpful if you're trying to break things down, look at the deal, look and see if there's anything going on that you need to be aware of. And there's also some other tools that we may use, but these are tools that I use on a weekly basis when I'm assisting our acquisitions team. And again, I recommend that you find some of these tools, and most counties will have this information. And so use what you can as you're trying to evaluate that deal, and make sure. I have been on occasion investors where maybe I sent out a pro forma and I actually did not adjust the square footage correctly. And so I have had investors who did use similar tools to these to question it. Or you may see that there's a discrepancy on what's on Zillow or Realtor.com and compared to what you're finding on these. And it shouldn't happen. But again, the owner, if they were to claim a website like a Zillow, they have the ability to edit information. And so they could adjust information accordingly. So these types of tools really help. And one more thing that it really helps me is when I go to the Assessor site and I'm actually pulling up information and I see that it's a 2-bed, 1-bath or a 3-bed, 1-bath. It also lets me know that whether or not there's been permits pulled, because in many cases for us, we pull a permit for every project we do. And so that information would be there available once these permits are pulled and information has been adjusted at the county. And so these are ways you can look that up and find out if over the years things have been done according to code and permits been pulled. These are, again, all different tools you can use to do that. And so I hope you put these into practice. I hope there are things that you can help you as you're trying to have some vetting of the deal. And so I really hope this has brought you some value. Of course, remember, we do build portfolios for investors. So if you're looking to get started into building your own portfolio, or you've been building it for a while and you're looking for a new market, you can reach out to me at jared@byolsongroup.com, or you can go to our website at byolsongroup.com, and you can join our buyers list there. You can actually, from there, you can schedule a call with me. If it's your first time and you like to get to know us a little bit better, you can schedule a call with me. There's a link that'll be provided for you. And then also you'll get our deals. And so that's it. And then lastly, you do have an option to download a free copy of our buyer's guide, which breaks down what's happening in our area, how you purchase from Olson Group, the different options, the different products we sell, and how you can work with us. And so we really hope this has brought value to you. If it did, you give us 5 stars, thumbs up, like it, all the different things you can do. We really appreciate that. And like Tom always tells us, tell a friend, give a referral for us, and that does help. I mean, if you have somebody that you think this would bring value to, send them a link, send them something, recommend it to them, and say, hey, I saw this podcast and think it might help you. But again, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you for listening and supporting Olson Group, and as we build our podcast, and also as we help you build your portfolios. Active Turnkey, the best way to buy rentals. See you guys.
Hi everyone, my name is Ish Deserum. I am a client of Olson Property Services. I am an out-of-state investor, so I really am reliant on a solid group of people on the ground who can manage my portfolio in Northwest Indiana, and I have been able to find that in the OPS team. One thing I think that really differentiates them from others is their personal touch. Shout out to Cheryl and the team. They've done a phenomenal job, and check them out. Thanks.
Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.